Hello, this is Saganfan1983 here, and welcome to an extraordinary commentary. For my avatar, I will be using the Colo clawfish. I have been itching to make this commentary for some time now, but there is one life-changing event in my life that gave me all the more incentive to create this awesome commentary. On Saturday, August 1st, 2015, I was checking out the Red Letter Media website to look at comments on Plinkett's Phantom Menace review and found this guy known as Blade57 HRC. This online encounter with Blade57 HRC on the first day of August 2015 truly changed my life for the better. When I came across one of Blade57 HRC's comments on the 3D edition of Plinkett's TPM review, I found a link to Blade57 HRC's YouTube video titled Star Wars, Plinkett's Ignorance. On YouTube, Blade57 HRC is known as Ira Pro V. This commentary is my gift to Blade57 HRC. The reviewer in question is internet famous, but remember this very well. Fame does not equal immunity. The review in question is very faulty, yet so many people actually agree with it, which is quite sad. I bet that many of you watching this commentary have already heard of an independent film company called Red Letter Media that has made shorts, cartoons, and film reviews. Michael Staglasa is the founder and the head of Red Letter Media. He founded Red Letter Media when he used to live in Arizona, and he now lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mike Staglasa plays this character that he created named Mr. Harry Steve Plinkett, including in the review in question. And there is nothing wrong with voicing or playing your own creation. The Mr. Plinkett character has a fondness for Totino's pizza rolls. He not only eats pizza rolls, he also gives out pizza rolls to his loyal followers and fans, like asking people to email him if they want a pizza roll. When discussing the Star Wars prequels, Plinkett is a very nitpicky and very biased grumpy grudge who jumps to conclusions left and right. In this commentary, I will be tackling Harry S. Plinkett's Star Wars The Phantom Menace review. That so-called review is really a long drawn-out nitpicky rage fest that is soaked in double standards galore. Mr. Plinkett is the king of the nitpickers. Although there has been a polarized controversy over the Star Wars prequel since 1999 after The Phantom Menace came out, Mr. Plinkett is by far the instigator of a mass wave of incessant harassment and bullying directed against Star Wars prequel fans. So without any further ado, let's dive in and warp speed.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son. I mean, how much more could you possibly fuck up the entire backstory to Star Wars? And while my son eventually hanged himself in the bathroom of the gas station, the unfortunate reality of the Star Wars prequels is that they'll be around forever. They will never go away. It could never be undone.
So what? Is it affecting you? No.
Number 1. The characters. The biggest and most glaring problem with The Phantom Menace is the characters. This is like the most obvious part of movie making, but I guess I gotta explain it when talking about this turd. So let's start at movie making 101, shall we? You see, in most movies, the audience needs a character to connect with. Typically, this character is something called a protagonist. When you're in a weird movie with like aliens and monsters and weirdos, the audience really needs someone who's like a normal person like them to guide them through the story. Now this of course doesn't apply to every movie, but it works best in the sci-fi, superhero, action, and fantasy genres.
There he goes, starting up with this insistence on this linear concept of storytelling with one main protagonist for the audience to connect to. Let me burst your bubble. The Kirk, Spock, and Bones triangle is a good counterexample.
So in addition to being like an everyday kind of schlub, usually the protagonist is someone that's down on their luck, in a bad place in their lives, or someone where everything just doesn't always go perfectly for them.
Either you choose to be at your desk on time from this day forth, or you choose to find yourself another job.
Well, maybe it's time to get a real job.
No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Eventually they'll be confronted with some kind of obstacle or struggle that they gotta deal with.
War! We're going to war!
If we like them, we hope they succeed. The drama in the film is the result of us rooting for them against opposition.
Go get him, kid.
Eventually our will find themselves in the lowest point where it seems like all is lost. But eventually they'll pull through and conquer whatever force opposes them.
You're a terminated fucker.
It's satisfying when our hero gets ahead from where they started off at.
I love you!
They make like a change. This is called an arc. Often too, they'll get the girl in the end as icing on the cake.
I am quite offended by your idea of the protagonist getting the girl in the end like icing on the cake. You can still have character arcs when dealing with multiple main protagonists in a movie. And movies don't all have to follow that linear formula that you just discussed, and you are about to shoot yourself in the foot.
Now I need to explain that I don't think that all movies should be the same or conform to the same kind of structure, but it works well in certain kind of movies. So unless they're the Coen brothers, David Lynch, Paul Thomas Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, Lars von Trier, David Cronenberg, Gus Van Sant, Quentin Tarantino, John Waters, Wes Anderson, Sam Peckinpah, Terry Gilliam, Martin Scorsese, Werner Herzog, or Jim Jarmusch, you really shouldn't stray away too far from this kind of formula. Especially if you're making a movie that's aimed at children that has a cartoon rabbit in it that steps in the poopy.
Oh! You just surrendered your argument and admitted that not all movies have to follow this rigid linear formula by listing certain directors like Stanley Kubrick. There is no reason why straying away from that linear single main protagonist formula cannot work for a Star Wars movie like The Phantom Menace. Bias much?
This is all, of course, completely applicable to the original Star Wars film and the character of Luke Skywalker.
I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
This was accomplished even without all the wonders of modern CGI. Now, with all you've just learned in this video that I've made for educational purposes, I want you to tell me who the main character of the Phantom Menace was. I can tell you it's not the Jedi. They were just on some kind of boring mission that they didn't really care about. Plus, they're fucking boring themselves.
What happens to one of you will affect the other. You must understand this.
It wasn't Queen Amidala, because she was some foreign queen the movie was certainly not really about specifically either. You might be thinking that it's Anakin, because he was like a slave and saved the day at the end by accidentally blowing up the starship. But the audience doesn't meet Anakin until 45 minutes into the movie. And then the things that are happening around him are pretty much out of his control or understanding. If a protagonist has no concept of what's going on or what's at stake, then there's no real tension or drama. Without that, there's no story. So the conclusion is that there isn't one.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
I do agree that there is no clear single main protagonist in The Phantom Menace with the strength of Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. The movie follows Qui-Gon Jinn through his mission, finding Anakin, and his dilemma on whether or not to train the boy in the face of opposition from the Jedi Council. This movie also follows Queen Amidala and her duty to her people. Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Queen Amidala are main protagonists in this movie. The Phantom Menace has a fractured protagonist pattern in which each of the various protagonists has their own dilemmas and arcs that add to the picture of the story. It's the same in the 6 Star Trek TOS motion pictures. Phantom Menace accomplishes this super goal for all the protagonist structure. Never once do you watch that film without a sense of what the story is or what needs to be accomplished for our band of heroes to win the day.
Before the movie opened, I was really excited to hear that Scottish actor Ewan MacDonald was going to be playing Obi-Wan Kenobi. I thought that was a great choice, and he'd be perfect as the lead of this movie. But he wasn't really. He just sat on the ship and complains a lot.
The Queen's wardrobe, maybe, but not enough for you to barter with. Not in the amounts you're talking about.
So you may like the characters, you know, if you're stupid.
And by the way, just because somebody likes the characters in The Phantom Menace does not automatically mean that they are stupid.
But let's ask some real people about the Star Wars characters and see what they say. I posed this simple challenge to them. Describe the following Star Wars character without saying what they looked like, what kind of costume they wore, or what their profession or role in the movie was. Describe this character to your friends like they ain't never seen Star Wars. The more descriptive they could get, the stronger the character, eh?
So in a vain attempt to prove your point about a lack of clear characters and protagonists, you asked 4 people who haven't really seen The Phantom Menace more than once or don't have very good memory. I too shall play your game.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
He is stoic.
I don't remember that character.
Okay, is Liam Neeson with the beard?
Oh, yes.
Well, he has a beard. Qui-Gon Jinn, and he was...
Let's see here, Stern?
Qui-Gon Jinn is a venerable older man who bucks both tradition and authority to follow his heart and to take his own path. He is wise, offering constant advice and commentary on things. He keeps his cards close to his chest, often to the point of befuddling and frustrating those who work beneath him. He is a reserved and wise swordmaster. Qui-Gon Jinn has a knack for challenging conventional thinking.
Queen Amidala.
That is going to be fucking impossible because she doesn't have a character.
She is, she's Natalie Portman.
Yeah, just kind of
Well, I can't say she's a queen. I was gonna say she's a queen.
normal, I guess. Just kind of normal.
Makeup would be a description. I was gonna describe the makeup.
Describe Queen Amidala's character. Monotone. She's the... She looks a lot like Keira Knightley.
I can't answer that, and you know it.
So...
She is... This is funny, by the way. I get it.
Queen Amidala has an overriding sense of duty and civic pride to her people. Despite being thought to be naive, she has the strength and courage to help her win the day. She is not interested in the pomp and circumstance of royal life, and instead prefers to witness and participate in events firsthand. She is eloquent and concerned, willing to fight for her people in a way that is like her daughter, Princess Leia. And for bonus rounds, I will describe Jar Jar Binks and James Tiberius Kirk from Star Trek TOS by your rules, Plinkett. Jar Jar Binks has a warm personality, and he sometimes likes to help others. He follows his friends and does what he feels is right, despite certain risks that may be involved. He is trustworthy and loyal. He worries for the other people around him when they are in danger. He is effeminate and selfless. My role model, James Tiberius Kirk, is a gutsy problem solver. He always finds a way to get out of dire situations, and he cares more about the safety of others than his own safety. He is clever, determined, and he does not like to lose. He thinks in 3 dimensions, and if James T. Kirk ever met Harry S. Plinkett, he would teach that pizza roll addict a serious lesson. Asking people who have not seen or don't understand The Phantom Menace to describe the basic character traits of the characters is not a genuine argument. All you needed to do was to ask someone who has watched and understands the Phantom Menace, and I know that you would not have included that in your cockamamie review for obvious reasons.
Number 2. The story. The second biggest problem with The Phantom Menace is the whole story and the way it was told. It's almost mind-boggling how complex the awfulness is. From the very start of this movie, I could tell something was really wrong, just by the way it started. It opens with some boring pilot asking for permission to land on a ship that looks like a half-eaten donut with a donut hole in the middle. What the fuck is that? Then 2 cloaked figures walk into a room in a completely flat angle. They sit down in a conference room, drink tea, and wait to talk about a trade dispute with something that looks like my ex-wife. While they eventually do get to the ball-numbing, mindless action that the fanboys crave, I found myself utterly bored already.
Aha! I see that you jumped to conclusions from the very start. That should come as no surprise, since after all, you are truly the king of the nitpickers. I never felt that the movie was going to be so terrible from first seeing the opening.
Compare this fecal matter to the opening of the original Star Wars. You see, a guy named William Shakespeare once said, "Brevity is the soul of wit." This just means don't waste my time. You keep it nice and simple. I said stop wasting my time. Stop it! Without saying one word of awkward, boring political dialogue that goes on for 10 minutes, we know everything we need to know just by the visuals. Rebels, Empire. We get a sense of how small and ill-equipped the rebels are and how large and powerful the Empire is. The low angle implies dominance, and the length of the Star Destroyer implies the long reach of the Empire. This shot says everything we need to know without saying one word. In fact, this is so genius, I have a feeling that George Lucas had nothing to do with it and probably fought against putting it in the movie. So this comparison of openings is a small example of the overall styles of both films.
George Lucas did not fight against having that opening scene of A New Hope put into the movie. Chances are that it was his idea all along. When things open in A New Hope and throughout the original trilogy, things are really bad in the Star Wars galaxy. The Phantom Menace is set 3 decades prior to A New Hope, when things were more idyllic and peaceful. If the prequels like TPM were to have the same type of turmoil featured in the classic trilogy, the series would be monotonous and boring, plus it would not make any sense at all either.
The original trilogy was a modern-day homage to the classic adventure serials of the past, the kind I used to watch when I was in my 40s. Good versus evil, the classic hero on a journey, the adventurous rogue, a damsel in distress, the wise old sage, gay robots, and an epic quest of discovery. The new movies are about shoving as much crap into each shot as possible.
It's so dense, every single image has so many things going on.
This is part of the reason why I find the special editions so fucking offensive. Because you're into what's happening in the movie, and they keep shoving more shit on the screen to distract you. It reminds me of a child waving his arms in the background for attention. Doesn't Lucas realize that cluttering the frame up with shit is not what makes Star Wars good?
Did you just build a straw man fallacy? Yes, you did, and let me shoot it down and point it out to you. You flat out claimed that the Star Wars prequels are just about shoving as much junk onto the screen as possible and all about cluttering things up. This assertion of yours has absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever about the motivations behind the making of the Star Wars prequels, you twat. You want Star Wars to be this black and white good versus evil formula in the likeness of Flash Gordon, or you get grumpy. The Star Wars prequels add a wonderful myriad of gray areas to the Star Wars franchise. You like Star Trek TOS when it stays away from the Flash Gordon formula, yet you complain about the Phantom Menace staying away from the Flash Gordon template, which makes you a hypocrite. There is no reason why avoiding the Flash Gordon template cannot work for a Star Wars movie like The Phantom Menace. Therefore, I'm counting you out for double standards.
So the film is called The Phantom Menace, and by the nature of the story, there is no clear villain. Hey, idiot! You're not making the usual suspects here. You're making a movie for children, right?
Supreme Chancellor, delegates of the Senate. A tragedy has occurred.
Which started right here with the taxation of trade routes and has now engulfed our entire planet in the oppression of the...
How about a bad guy in the movie whose motivation is clear?
Commander, tear this ship apart until you found those plans and bring me the passengers. I want them alive!
The prequels should be very similar in style to the originals, because I don't like things that are different.
There is a clear-cut mystery villain in The Phantom Menace. He is Senator Palpatine / Darth Sidious, and in the classic trilogy, he is the evil Emperor. His motivation is clear. It is to rise to power and turn the Republic into an imperial dictatorship with him as the dictator. The classic trilogy that you love proves it. The prequels do not in any way have to be similar to the classic trilogy. So get over yourself, Plinkett.
Number 3, death and space taxes. So when you find yourself thinking things like, huh? Or what? When you're watching how illogical characters act in a movie, it's not really a good sign. Now, I've analyzed this film with a team of cheerleaders. They came up with one unanimous conclusion. That if I let them go, they promise they won't tell nobody. Anyways, so at the end of the movie, Yoda makes Obi-Wan a Jedi Knight.
Confer on you the level of Jedi Knight. The Council does.
Even though in the opening titles it says he's a Jedi Knight. So we'll just call him Jedi Knights too. People call me a murderer even though I ain't never been caught yet.
The opening titles did consider Jedi apprentices to be Jedi Knights, and the level of Jedi Knight that Yoda was referring to was the rank of a Jedi that can take an apprentice under his wing. Obi-Wan Kenobi was Qui-Gon Jinn's apprentice throughout the movie. The characters in this movie were not acting nearly as illogical as you paint them out to be, Plinkett.
So the Jedis are there to do what exactly? According to the opening title crawl, it was to settle a dispute over the taxation of trade routes. Oh. So what makes the Jedi Knights experts in intergalactic trade laws? So the Trade Federation have set up a blockade around Naboo in order to stop them from getting space supplies, which instantly causes some kind of crisis that we never see. Okay. I don't get it. Why would an organization called the Trade Federation want to blockade trade?
There's the blockade.
Usually a blockade is to stop something you don't want to get in?
The Trade Federation wants to subjugate certain planets like Naboo to make money and power. That is why they blockaded that planet. The Naboo citizens would not care why the Trade Federation was blockading their planet. That criminal blockade was enough to force our heroes into action. By the way, you waste too much brain power on a MacGuffin. Alfred Hitchcock coined this term. It's a plot device that makes the action happen without being important in and of itself.
So if the Trade Federation were like merchants moving goods and services around the galaxy, then why did they seem more like a military with armies or robots? However, if they were like a bureaucracy that was in charge of overseeing and regulating trade routes, you'd think they'd be happy about the whole new space taxes. Unless all the taxes went straight to like a space Obama and they didn't see any of it. The point is, I'm still not sure what the donut ships were there to do.
The Trade Federation is also like an army because they are greedy capitalists and war profiteers. Have you ever heard of war profiteering before? Companies like Halliburton are real-life war profiteers. The trade feds represented opulence and greed. Capitalism and militarism often go hand in hand, and that is why the Trade Federation is also like an army. The donut-shaped ships that you are referring to are there simply to blockade the planet, and you should have answered that silly question yourself from the movie only. I figured it out on a dime the first time around.
I got Phantom Menace toys scattered all over in my basement. You see, my grandkids play with them down there when they come over to visit, and they leave that shit all over the place. Let me see if I can find some of them so I can show you. I'm gonna go down in my basement now, hold on. I gotta switch the cameras. Okay, here we are in my basement. See, my grandkids, they come over and they play and they leave their stupid Star Wars shit around. The Qui-Gon sucker. They didn't even eat the sucker. What's this shit? Anakin something? What else did they leave around my basement? What's this? What is this? Some kind of Darth Maul toy? These kids always leaving this crap around. There. What's this? They left shit in my bin? My plastic bin. What is this? Darth Maul? Stupid Darth Maul. Huh? What do we got here? They didn't even open this. Naboo accessory set. What is this?
Don't hurt me.
Nice window.
So basically, you went into your basement ranting and raving like a lunatic about Phantom Menace toys. That asinine stunt did not prove any of your points. It accomplished absolutely nothing.
Anyway, so I realized that Senator Palpatine was using the Trade Federation to create a crisis to advance himself politically. Like that was the plot, I think. But the conflict from the blockade and the subsequent invasion is the entire movie. Understanding what role the Trade Federation played in this is important. You know, what the blockade was about, who was getting taxed, what kind of supplies were so crucial to the Naboo. What was it, like medical supplies? Was there some kind of plague? Did they not have the capacity to survive on such a lush planet with a huge power reactor for 1 day without space trade? You see, I would have accepted the idea of some kind of mystery villain if the basics were at least clear.
Palpatine works in the shadows and pulls the strings, thus setting the stage. This is how Palpatine/Sidious operates, in subtle ways to get what he wants. This is the beginning of the road that leads us to the ultimate destruction of the Jedi.
So when two guys wearing robes come on board their ship, Rosie the robot just assumes they are Jedi Knights and tells the Shatnerians.
The ambassadors are Jedi Knights, I believe.
Even though almost every single character wears robes in Star Wars. Then somehow this robot knows or thinks they're Jedi Knights. Hey idiots, so much for the disguise. Even a protocol droid could sniff you out. Maybe it's not a disguise, but whatever.
In reality, it is no stretch to believe that a protocol droid that is programmed for etiquette and protocol in situations like this could recognize what a Jedi Knight is.
So the Shatnerians immediately inform this mystery guy who they're running this scam with, a guy who looks like Satan, that Jedis are on the ship. And of course, so we can have an action scene, he tells them to kill the Jedi.
Kill them immediately.
You see, they never once went into the room to say hello to the Jedi, and that they'll be right with them. But they tell Palpatine that they are Jedis, and then they try to gas them to death based solely on the hunch of a droid.
The Trade Federation had no prior experience with Jedi Knights, so it does make perfect sense for them to think that gassing them will work. If Palpatine were to come out waving his arms to reveal his schemes now, that would be stupid.
Who's fucking with my medicine? Who wants a pizza roll? Email me if you want a pizza roll. Post a comment on this web zone if you want a pizza roll. Who's fucking with my medicine?
Man. Seriously? You put some pizza rolls into a paper envelope that is designed to mail letters. I don't think that the mailman would want to take that greasy envelope, since it would damage the letters that he carries. Such an envelope would stink, and it would be very unsanitary. Do I have to call the sanitation squad on you? I would throw that pizza roll envelope in the trash.
Now this is where it gets complex, my lovelies. So I think this is what happened, I'm not sure. But Palpatine wanted to create a crisis on Naboo so that the naive young queen would propose a vote of no confidence for Chancellor Valorum. This would lead to Palpatine getting elected in his place, right? Like, I mean, that's the plot, I think? So how does killing the Jedi or creating a communications blackout on the planet even get word back to the Senate that there is a crisis? At the end of the movie, Amidala goes back to the planet to solve the problem herself, because the Senate wanted to send an independent team to investigate whether or not the invasion was real.
Will you defer your motion to allow a commission to explore the validity of your accusations?
I guess the testimony of 2 Jedi Knights wasn't good enough. Those were the guys that Valorum trusted enough to settle the whole dispute in the first place? That don't make sense.
Palpatine/Sidious was very excellent at pulling the strings, and as you stated, he wanted to create a crisis that would advance him into power. He gives as much misinformation as Sidious as he does as Palpatine.
So anyways, when the guys told Palpatine that Jedis were there, he should have said this.
Tell the Jedi that there will be no negotiations. Tell them that you plan to invade the planet next, and then send them back to Coruscant to inform the Senate.
Instead, he tells him to do the exact opposite of what will help his plan. Like he wanted her to sign the treaty, right?
I want that treaty signed.
He seemed really intent on having her sign the treaty to make the invasion legal. So what if she was like a total coward and then actually signed the treaty? Like right away? Then the crisis would be over and there'd be no need for a vote of no confidence. See what I mean? This sounding like an 8-year-old wrote it?
If Palpatine were to get Queen Amidala to sign the treaty to make the invasion of Naboo legal, he could go back to the Senate and say how the Queen of Naboo was bullied into this and how the trade feds killed the 2 Jedi Knights that the quote-unquote weak Chancellor sent. He would have gotten a strong sympathy vote. Makes sense to me.
So anyways, it's time to kill off the Jedi. Oh good. How do they go about it? Well, they start pumping in an obvious deadly white gas into the room. This alerts them to danger. Well, actually, blowing up their ship does. I guess they should have pumped in the gas first, and after the Jedis were dead, then blow the ship up? Anyways, back to the gas. Hey idiots! Have you ever heard of carbon monoxide? It's odorless and colorless. Your wife won't even know what hit her. Oh, I mean Jedi. Also, moments earlier, the Jedi willingly drank tea that was given to them, while they discussed how everything felt really fishy.
I sense an unusual amount of fear for something as trivial as this trade dispute.
Hey, you guys got any rat poison lying around? Put it in the tea! Put it in the tea! They'll drink it! Put the rat poison in the tea!
Way to go, demanding that Nuke Gunray put your rat poison into the Jedi's tea. Congratulations, you forgot to mention that the tea was served before the order was given to kill them. Nice anti-chronological thinking there, mate. You do have a point about the thick, visible poison gas that was used, but you would have complained anyway had the gas been invisible or odorless. The Trade Federation's ham-fisted attempts to kill the Jedi that you complain about are due to their inexperience in fighting Jedi Knights. The Jedi did not sense danger, they sensed fear.
So anyways, then the dioxazine starts filling up the room, and then... Dioxazine. Hey wait, how does Qui-Gon know what kind of gas it is before he smells it? Isn't that like a contradiction? Do you smell the deadly white gas? I guess it's a little too late. Maybe just got a little sniff of it. Anyways, you know, this idea could work, because we see that the Jedi hold their breath, which implies there's some kind of danger of them running out of breath, right? Maybe they could hold their breath for like 2 hours, because they're Jedis. Well, no, that's not true, because later in the film we see they need to use them breathing things underwater for that short swim to the Gunga Sea world. So anyways, it's like the Jedi know that the droids are going to open up the door in a very short time before they run out of breath, because they don't immediately start trying to cut their way out, which is what I'd be doing. I'd probably be screaming too, like a little girl. So what are they doing in there? Then the dumbest line in the movie is said.
They must be dead by now. Destroy what's left of them.
What does that mean? Hey asshole, How about you leave the door closed for like 4 hours? And then if they try to cut through the door, start shooting them in the face. Then pump in more gas and keep pumping it in.
You complain about the Jedi holding their breath. They are Jedi, so of course they will know when the droids are just about to open the door. Again, the Trade Federation had no previous experience with Jedi Knights.
Oh, right. So they open the doors anyways, and they let the Jedi out and attack them with completely useless robots. Just tell them to leave, and that you don't want to negotiate. And then when their ship flies out of your space dock, shoot it with lasers! Also, we need to consider the fact that killing 2 Jedi that were sent there as peaceful ambassadors would be a pretty heinous crime in the eyes of the Galactic Senate, an organization that runs everything, including the space taxes. I mean, you could just claim that they never got there.
I know nothing of any ambassadors.
I have assurances from the Chancellor. His ambassadors did arrive.
But now you've got the burned wreckage of their ship inside your horribly burned docking bay.
As soon as there was any ill will towards them, they were tipped off to the danger. You suggested to let the Jedi go back onto their ship and to say to them that you don't want to negotiate with them. And then you suggested that when their ship takes off with both Jedi on board, to destroy it. What you've just suggested here would have made matters worse for this movie.
Number 4. Who's doing what? Where? Why? Why are the Shatnerians taking orders from this mystery hologram again? What did he promise them that would be so worth risking their entire organization for? The location of the Fountain of Youth? A planet made of gold? Corrective surgery for this woman's face? How about a night in Megan's foxhole? Seriously, what was it? Oh, we're never told, are we? Generally speaking, it's easy to get a handful of insane people to follow you on some kind of legal or crazy scheme. But when you're talking about a huge organization that's run with military efficiency, then they're probably going to want something in return for the use of 30 of their ships and risking everything. Darth Sidious can't really promise them future political favors because it would give away who he is. When they got arrested at the end, they could just say, "It was like a hologram in a cloak. He made us do it. In fact, he looks like Palpatine. And he sounds like him too. We got the recordings of the hologram. You want to look at him?" I find it hard to believe that these guys never started pointing fingers after they got caught.
The reason why the Trade Federation was in league with Darth Sidious is simple. Sidious offered them the complete subjugation of planets like Naboo. Sidious was not on the Trade Federation's team. He was just using them as tools. It does not matter that Sidious will betray the Trade Federation at one point or another.
Number 5. I can't put enough quotation marks around the word story, so I won't try.
Sir, they've gone up the ventilation shaft.
How do you know that? I said, how do you know that? Answer me, thing in the mouth face. What is that anyways? What, did you smoke too much? What's wrong with your face? Anyways, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they end up in the hangar bay somehow, where the droid armies are being staged for an invasion. Why don't the Jedis just start fighting all of them? Then steal a ship and head back to Coruscant to tell the Galactic Senate what's going on. It's not so crazy because later in the film they attempt to run the blockade with one ship and they make it through. The fact that they even tried that makes this a possible option. What is wrong with your face?
Let's get realistic here. First of all, the Jedi are clearly outnumbered. No pair of Jedi could take out 1,000 battle droids at once. It just could not happen. Moreover, that was just one batch from one hangar of one of 30 battleships. Even if they were to wipe out all of the droids in that hangar bay that they were in, it would not do anyone any good at all. Their course of action was correct.
But instead, Qui-Gon in all his wisdom thinks it's a better idea to go down with the army to, quote, warn the Naboo.
We've got to warn the Naboo and contact Chancellor Valorum.
Hey, genius. If you're going down with the army, don't you think it's a little too late to warn them about the army? And what the fuck are the Naboo gonna do anyways? They don't even have a real army, just volunteers.
Our security volunteers will be no match against the battle-hardened Federation army.
So the droid army just rolls in, unchallenged, as expected.
Another reason for those two Jedi Knights to take the action that they took at that point in the movie was so at least one of them can warn the Naboo. And Qui-Gon is not stupid. He thought about it with care before arriving at that decision. They could not warn the Naboo if they took a ship back to Coruscant as you insisted on earlier.
Anyways, so then for no reason they decide to stow away on different ships.
Let's split up. Stow aboard separate ships and meet down on the planet.
Is this guy a fucking retard? Maybe that's why they call him Qui-Gon Jinn. Because he's always drinking gin. This is a minor point, but what would going down on the planet on separate ships accomplish? Let's think about this. Number 1. Increase the chances of getting caught by 100%. 2. Have no one else to help you if you get caught and get into a fight with robots. 3. Increase the possibility of getting separated by hundreds, if not thousands of miles by not knowing where the other craft is going to land on the planet. But thankfully they both aren't discovered and they meet up in the same spot in the woods.
First of all, they had no way of knowing where each individual landing craft is going to land. It gives them the best possible chance of at least one of them getting to the Naboo quickly. Furthermore, it doubled their chances of success if one of them is discovered, that the other one can still make it. Plus, it would allow them to sabotage a greater number of droids and artillery if they chose to.
Then, although the reason for them going down to the planet was to warn the Naboo about the army, they decide to follow a cartoon rabbit underwater. Why? Why not just keep moving towards the Naboo city? Hey Ginny, I thought you went down there to warn the Naboo. How is this gonna accomplish that? What was your plan from the beginning when you got down there? Did you plan to find a magical underwater craft that would go through the planet's core? Or did you just plan to run along the surface? What's wrong with your face? This is the first point they should have ditched Jar Jar. This is also the point when the movie starts to officially fall apart. This is the moment when the Star Wars saga is now damaged totally beyond repair. The lapses in common sense and logic begin to compound on the movie and now it is broken. I could end this review here, but I'm really just getting started.
Typical. You are all offended by the fact that Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi follow Jar Jar Binks. I am not surprised one single solitary bit. You do realize that they don't know where any cities on Naboo are, and Jar Jar leads them to the Gungan city. Since the Gungans and the Naboo are in a symbiotic relationship, whether they like to admit it or not, they could be reasonably expected to know how the Jedi could most quickly warn the Naboo of the impending invasion. This is all really reasonable to swallow. And by the way, there is absolutely nothing wrong with Jar Jar Binks, and he in no way ruined Star Wars. You seriously need to get over yourself, Mr. Plinkett.
Number 6. Invasion of boring.
A communications disruption can mean only one thing. Invasion.
It can also mean that you didn't pay your phone bill. So the Naboo seem to be on the case about this thing. The old guy seems to know what's going on. And although they are a peaceful people with no army, this asshole seems to be an expert in the process of planetary invasions. So what exactly is the purpose of this invasion? It's almost like after Lucas wrote the invasion scenes, he didn't really know what to do next. So he thought he'd make the Queen have to sign a treaty to make the invasion legal. I mean, why not? First of all, forcing someone to sign a treaty sort of contradicts the purpose of a signature on a treaty. You might as well just forge it if you're going to make her sign it.
How can you judge a movie by discarding its internal logic? You can't. You are judging The Phantom Menace for what it is not instead of looking for its underlying merits. I have already been over your points about the invasion of Naboo and that treaty that the Trade Federation tried to force Queen Amidala to sign, and I will not repeat myself.
So meanwhile, Qui-Gon, Booze, and Obi-Wan are in the underwater city. Qui-Gon is still talking about warning the Naboo that they're about to be attacked, when he really doesn't know that they're actually going to attack them.
A droid army is about to attack the Naboo.
Then since Qui-Gon is jumping to conclusions and making shit up, Obi-Wan starts doing it too.
Once those droids take control of the surface, they will take control of you.
First of all, the only thing that the Jedis know at this point is that they were sent to settle a trivial dispute about taxing trade routes. All of a sudden, Obi-Wan thinks he knows the entire plan of the Trade Federation. How does he know they plan to take control of the surface and the underwater city too?
So you have a problem with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn knowing somehow that the droid army will attack the Naboo and then come down to attack the Gungans. Obi-Wan Kenobi brought up a very important point about what happens to one will affect the other. It makes perfect sense. And the two Jedi are not jumping to conclusions here. The only one who is jumping to conclusions is you, Mr. Plinkett, since after all, you are the king of the nitpickers.
Maybe they just want to steal some kind of priceless artifact from the Naboo. Maybe the Naboo did some kind of horrific act against the Trade Federation and they're just getting some revenge.
You and the Naboo form a symbiont circle. What happens to one of you will affect the other. You must understand this.
Now what does that even mean? How is a totally isolated city underwater affected at all by the Naboo being attacked by droids on the complete other side of the planet?
Yes, the droid army landed at the Naboo capital city of Theed. The Trade Federation has hundreds of landing craft and landed all over the planet to invade the entire planet. And that is a major reason as to why the attack on the Naboo at Theed would affect the Gungans.
Yes, I said the other side of the planet because...
The speediest way to the Naboo is going through the planet core.
By planet core, I assume he means planet core. Like the center? Usually that's what a core is. So they spend 2 hours flying deeper and deeper into the planet underwater. I guess to emerge on the other side of the planet? I guess?
For once, you had a quite decent point about the planet core thing. However, the writers wanted to have a quickest route for the two Jedi to take to Theed, which, as you said, is on the other side of the planet.
This begs the question, why did the droid armies land on the other side of the planet where the Gunga city is? If they expected no opposition, why land in the middle of forests and spend time chopping through the woods so far away from your target? Why not just land right outside the city? Or in the city? Anyways, so like idiots, they surfaced the bongo right in the middle of an occupied city in broad daylight. And then Ginny just looks around without any attempt at subterfuge.
I already answered your silly question about where the droid army landed. I see no problem with the bongo surfacing in an occupied city in broad daylight. The Jedi had to get out and warn the Naboo, especially the teenage queen herself. Qui-Gon was looking around before making a decision to step out of the bongo and to set foot in Theed.
Inside the city, Queen Amidala has been captured by the Green Guys. But instead of forcing her to sign the treaty right then and there, or keeping her locked up inside the big Capitol building under heavy guard, they inexplicably send her away from them.
Commander.
Yes, sir.
Process them.
Remember, this is the most important person in their whole plan, and they send her to be processed in some place called Camp 4.
Captain, take them to Camp 4. Roger, roger.
Oh. But at least they remembered to send her with a whopping 8 battle droids to protect her from the 2 Jedis that they just discussed they had not found yet.
You didn't tell him about the missing Jedi.
No need to report that to him until we have something to report.
But don't worry. These battle droids have proven very effective against Jedi Knights. Oh. Wait. No. You know, it really adds a lot of tension in the movie when the main enemy forces are totally ineffective.
There are too many of them. It won't be a problem.
Oh, it shouldn't be a problem. Oh, now I'm really on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, Jedi cut them down like they're butter. And they really are pretty useless.
Fuck you.
I will concede a little bit to your point about the Trade Federation sending 8 battle droids to take Queen Amidala to processing Camp 4. They did mention that the 2 Jedi were missing. They should have sent 8 destroyer droids, which have routed out the Jedi before. However, processing Amidala is far more intimidating than Mr. Plinkett is. Too bad that you didn't bring enough imagination to the table, Plinkett.
Number 7. Escape from the planet of boring. Okay, so they free the Naboo Air Force, and then they get on a silver jet thing to run through a blockade. Which again, I remind you, the point of a blockade is to stop ships from getting through. So Qui-Gon Jinn could have very easily gotten everyone killed. Does anyone smell gin? Hey, it's 11:30 in the morning. Who's been drinking? So no one's really that nervous about running this blockade until the shield generator gets hit. Shabams! Blammo! Shabams!
Shield generator's been hit!
Ooh, then suddenly it's dangerous. Hey, wait. Just like knowing what kind of deadly gas it is before you smell it, how does the shield generator get hit while the shields are up? Shouldn't they? Oh, fuck it.
If we can't get the shield generator fixed, we'll be sitting ducks.
Wait, slow down, asshole. Everything anyone says in this movie makes no sense, so I have to keep up here, okay? Stop.
The shields are gone.
Okay, wait.
We're losing droids, fast. Stay here.
Wait.
And keep out of trouble.
Hold on a minute.
There's the blockade.
Hold
If we can't
on.
get the shield generator fixed, we'll be sitting ducks.
Okay, wait. How will you be sitting ducks without a shield generator? Are you implying that with the shield generator you wouldn't be sitting ducks? That you would be able to breeze through this blockade somehow? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of a blockade if any ship with an operational shield generator would suddenly not be a sitting duck and could go through the blockade?
Just because there is a blockade with powerful battleships does not mean that there is no way for any ships to get through it. Blockades are not foolproof. You are getting way too nitpicky about this, my Plinkett. R2 was not doing much to help Luke Skywalker in the classic trench run on the Death Star in A New Hope. R2 saving the Queen's spacecraft actually strengthens this weakness.
I would think that with Trade Federation ships of that size and quantity, you'd get blown to fucking pieces with or without shields if they all fired on you. So anyways, R2-D2 sticks a thing in a thing and fixes the shield generator. Then the dude says,
Deflect the shields up at maximum.
okay, so then that suddenly relieves all the tension in the scene and allows them to escape the blockade. If you'll notice though, after the shields are back up at maximum, they don't get hit again. So really, R2 fixing the shield generator did nothing at all. Maybe it gave him the confidence to escape? So then after they show no emotion at all about the droids being picked off one by one,
We're losing droids, fast.
they inexplicably send R2 up to the Queen to get a pat on the head, I guess. She thanks the little piece of equipment like it's a person. Hey, nobody thanked the ship. I think that did a lot more to help him escape.
Thank you, R2-D2.
Saying that this scene is garbage because of technobabble mechanics of Trade Federation warships is ridiculous. You also take an issue with the adolescent queen who has not seen the galaxy giving the droid her thanks. It makes perfect sense for her to thank the droid since it saved her ship. It would be silly to thank the ship because the ship would have been destroyed had R2-D2 not fixed it. This just seems like an awful nitpick to me.
You see, normal people don't think of droids as people. Even the kind-hearted Luke Skywalker reacts with sarcasm when introducing himself to R2-D2.
And this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello.
Would a queen really thank a droid? I don't know, maybe. Again, this is a film for babies.
I must be frank, Your Majesty. There is little chance the Senate will act on the invasion.
Chancellor Valorum seems to think there is hope.
If I may say so, Your Majesty, the Chancellor had me.
You erected a laughable straw man fallacy claiming that The Phantom Menace is a film for babies. This has no basis in reality for obvious reasons. The film was just meant to be kid-friendly, and it was properly rated PG. You brought up how normal people, including Luke Skywalker in the classic trilogy, do not treat droids as people to try and prop up your silly nitpicky point.
Wait, I gotta get this straight here, hold on. So, at this point, the queen in the middle that's wearing black is the decoy, but the real queen is Padme, is in the orange, right? Okay. So the handmaiden decoy then orders the queen to go clean the droid?
Clean this droid up as best you can. It deserves our gratitude.
Did Amidala ask to be sent off on a menial task prior to this so she could have a scene where she meets Jar Jar Binks? You'd think the real Queen would want to hang out in the throne room area to stay current on any updates about what's going on. And why did they even bring a dirty droid up to the Queen? Did they really think that a member of royalty was going to care that a droid fixed something and then personally thank it? So maybe the Queen and the Handmaiden, it's like a little game that they play, you know?
When I'm the Queen, I'm gonna have you go clean toilets. When I'm the Queen, I'm gonna have you die for me in a horrible explosion.
Oh wait, that happened. I'm so sorry.
I see no problem with one of the handmaidens playing the role of Queen, while the actual Queen, Padme, played a handmaiden. It makes sense to me. The handmaiden who poses as the Queen would later serve as a decoy. You got really uptight with Padme meeting Jar Jar Binks while cleaning the droid. I have absolutely no problem with it. Now tell me, do you harbor a grudge against Jar Jar Binks? Let's be honest here.
Number 8, I'm gonna slit my wrist. It's hard to stomach any more of this shit. I still don't know who the main character is and why we should care about any of this. At around this point in the original Star Wars movie, we've been with Luke almost the whole time getting to know him. We see his plight, his hopes and dreams. We feel his frustration, and then his sadness. The slow build-up added depth and emotion and anticipation for the story to expand. In The Phantom Menace, we have nothing. We have a monotone Queen who's hiding from signing a treaty that's supposed to do something. Why in fuck's name should we care at all? I don't care about any of these characters.
You seriously need to understand that when watching movies, that the information does not have to all be spoon-fed to you in order for the movie to make sense. You would understand the characters in The Phantom Menace if you were to read between the lines without any bias. If you can understand things like the Kirk, Spock, and Bones Trinity Triangle, which I cherish, then you can understand the characters in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Am I clear?
And to top that, we constantly have to question every single action that's taken by Qui-Gon, the wise Jedi. Almost every single line of dialogue makes no sense.
They don't want to attract attention.
If you're trying to avoid drawing attention to yourself, then why are you taking Jar Jar Binks into the city with you? Leave him on the ship!
My droid has a readout of what I need.
You say you took R2-D2 because he has the specs and the type of part you need, but yet Watto seems to know what you're talking about, and you have a thingy that shows it. R2 is never used for that purpose and does nothing at all. The two most effective, clear-minded, logical guys stay on the ship and wait, while the clumsy idiot, the slow-moving droid, a vulnerable, attractive young woman, and a drunk go wandering around the dangerous city. These two guys probably would have had the part by now.
Just wow, you called Qui-Gon Jinn a drunk for going to Mos Espa with R2-D2, Jar Jar Binks, and Padme. Had Qui-Gon not gone to get the part and had Obi-Wan gone to get the part instead, Padme and Anakin would not have met, and Luke and Leia would not have existed in Star Wars. Wow, you are ripping out an essential part of that Luke Skywalker that you so love by complaining like this, which makes you, in a sense, self-destructive. Qui-Gon Jinn was guided by midichlorians to a vergence in the Force, who was Anakin Skywalker.
Number 9. If I get a brain aneurysm as the result of this review, can I hold the filmmakers responsible? At this point I realize who the Phantom Menace is. No, it's not Jorge. It's Qui-Gon Jinn. His character is totally baffling to me, and I do not know why he's in this movie. If you ask me, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi should have been combined to form a new character, called Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan should have been the younger, eager, adventurous Jedi, who found Anakin, formed a bond with him, and then really wanted to train him in the Jedi arts when Yoda told him no. Instead, Obi-Wan, who seemed totally irritated with Anakin the whole movie, suddenly wants to train him at the end, only because Qui-Gon said to.
I gave Qui-Gon my word.
I see nothing wrong with Qui-Gon Jinn being the one who came up with the idea of training Anakin Skywalker. And no, Obi-Wan did not have to be the character who found Anakin, and yes, in light of Qui-Gon's wisdom, Obi-Wan overcame his prejudice and came around to training Anakin Skywalker. You really pulled that claim of Qui-Gon Jinn being the Phantom Menace, after which the film is named, out of thin air.
If they did have to have Qui-Gon, they should have had him on the ship, just like meditating the whole movie, saying very little, and just being wise. But then when Qui-Gon dies, Obi-Wan is left to move on without an older, wiser voice of reason, thus setting the stage for a poorly trained Anakin.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Yeah, George, that's true. But the only thing poetic here is that I was vomiting in stanzas. I don't even know what that means. So for no reason, Obi-Wan is the one who does not want to defy the Council. He's not a risk taker and he complains all the time like a woman.
We could be stuck here a very long time.
Then the older, wiser Jedi is the opposite of what he should be.
Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi was complaining and not being a risk-taker instead of the adventurous young man that you expected him to be prior to the release of this movie. Qui-Gon Jinn is still that wiser, older Jedi, and is not at all the opposite of what he should be, as you so happily paint him to be. Many old-school Star Wars fans hate the prequels because they built up high expectations over the course of 16 years, and they were blinded by this. You, my friend, are no exception.
Let's break down Qui-Gon, all the way to his midichlorians. Number 1, he has very questionable moral values. Qui-Gon Jinn repeatedly uses his Jedi mind trick to his advantage, whether it's to get Boss Nass to give him a bongo, which they completely trash, to use worthless money to scam Watto out of his ship parts,
credits will do fine,
or to fix a legitimate bet to his advantage. It's generally wrong to do these things, wouldn't you say? You can argue that the ends justify the means, but if that's the case, then why didn't Qui-Gon just steal the part from Watto? He could sneak in the middle of the night and just take the part. Or take it by force. And I don't mean that kind of force. I mean choke Watto while Padme grabs the part and they run out of the shop. Basically, it's the same as trying to trick him into accepting a worthless currency for the part.
There you go, starting your lame indictment of Qui-Gon Jinn. Your first argument is that Qui-Gon has no morals just because he uses the Force to influence outcomes. It is not at all questionable to me because it is part of Qui-Gon's charm. He defies the Council, Jedi Code, and Jedi tradition because, like me, he likes to challenge conventional thinking. He did not kill Watto in cold blood as you suggested he should do because it would not be the Jedi way or his way.
In the end, Watto's just out of the part. This also leads me to believe that Qui-Gon Jinn is incredibly stupid. He could have just went to another junk dealer and used his Jedi mind trick to swap out the Republic credits for money that Watto would take. In fact, when they arrive in town, he says,
"We'll try one of the smaller dealers."
Smaller dealers? Well, that implies there's larger ones. Watto tells him he's the only guy in town who's got the part.
And no one else has a T-14 hyperdrive, I promise you that.
Well, either Watto is using an older-than-dirt sales tactic, or Qui-Gon can really pick out which shop to go to randomly. Oh, wait. I guess midichlorians told him where to go so that he could find the boy. Oh, it was destiny or something. Hey, here's another idea. Why don't you trade the Naboo cruiser for a less fancy but functional ship? Or maybe hire a transport. Pay them all the money you have now and then promise more when you get to Coruscant. Sound familiar? Someone who's like a transport ship captain or a smuggler would have use for Republic credits because they travel around the galaxy. Probably go to other spaceports. You know, makes sense.
Qui-Gon had little experience on Tatooine, and if he were to try to sway a random smuggler to transport him to Coruscant, it would have drawn lots of unwanted attention and thus backfire. And the reason he did not search for another junk dealer who would take Republic credits was because it would have taken far too long, to the point that it would have been too late to save the Naboo from the Trade Federation by the time he found one.
But instead of using like the most common sense approach to everything, Qui-Gon concocts some kind of convoluted scheme so that we could get to the pod race. I honestly still don't understand it.
My ship will be the entry fee.
What would the boy ride? He smashed up my pod in the last race.
Well, I have acquired a pod in a game of chance.
So, you supply the pod and the entry fee.
If it's going to be 50-50, I suggest you front the cash for the entry.
I supply the boy. We split the winnings 50-50, I think, huh?
You keep all the winnings minus the costs of the parts I need.
So, you supply the pod.
We lose. You keep my ship.
Who was betting what? Then it gets more complicated later, when the bet changes.
I'll take that bet. I'll wager my new racing pod against, say...
Well...
the boy and his mother.
Your pod is worth 2 slaves.
The boy then.
So Anakin built the pod, but Watto didn't know that he built the pod, so that he raced with Watto's pod. So then Anakin tells Qui-Gon, if Watto wins, Anakin tells Qui-Gon to pretend that it's his pod. And Watto says, I'm gonna put up the entry fee if you let me use your pod. If they win, then the boy they get the money for the part, but if they lose, then Watto keeps the pod and the boy. Qui-Gon would have to pay back the Republic credits. Oh wait, no, he bet the ship. He bet the ship, and then if he loses the pod race, then Watto gets the ship in exchange for putting up the entry. If Qui-Gon wins, then he gets the prize money. But then later on they throw the boy actually into the deal. First it's the ship versus the pod, and the mom in the bet. So then if Watto wins, I don't know. If Qui-Gon...
I lost everything.
Whenever you gamble, my friend, eventually you lose. Man.
Hilarious! You were going around in ellipses over this bet. Trying to finagle the part they needed seems like the best course of action since the situation was dire. I am not going to get into how you are not able to understand the bet between Qui-Gon Jinn and Watto. I understand it perfectly ever since I first saw this movie in theaters when it came out in May 1999.
Number 10, Anakin Skywalker. No one likes little kids, especially ones that can't act.
Peruskit?
Cut. Let's try it again.
I'm a person, and my name is Anakin.
It's a kiss of death for your movie.
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
The way they have it is that Anakin and his mom live in a comfy little hut, and if they leave, there's a bomb in their brain.
Any attempt to escape,
and they blow you up. Boom!
I think that's the worst plot device ever shoved into a movie for convenience. What purpose did Shmi Skywalker serve to Watto? That she cleaned her own dishes? Oh, and then let's move on to this.
That was silly-nilly of you to claim that people hate kids and that children are the kiss of death in a movie. There are many well-received movies with children in them that prove you so miserably wrong. You're just complaining for nothing.
What about the idea that Anakin is the one who built C-3PO? Wait. Oh. This is wrong for so many reasons. I'm gonna list 3 of them. So the idea is that Anakin built C-3PO to help his mom around the house.
He's a protocol droid to help Mom.
But a protocol droid is typically used for etiquette and protocol.
I suppose you're programmed for etiquette and protocol.
They're basically like robot diplomats, not really very handy technically.
Hello, I am C-3PO Human Cyborg Relations.
It says his human-cyborg relations. He doesn't say cleans dishes. C-3PO is clumsy, awkward, and useless, unless you need someone to translate a language.
I'm not much more than an interpreter.
Plus his arms don't even bend. What the fuck is he supposed to help the mom with? A vacuum would have been a better thing to build. Or maybe a vibrator, as it seems like the only action Shmi was getting was with the Force. Hey, maybe that's why they call it the Force. Ah, rape jokes. I love them! Also, if you're a little boy with the knack for building things with spare parts, then why would you build the exact same droid that seems to have been mass-produced by a manufacturing plant somewhere? Wouldn't you build some kind of unique robot from your own imagination? And to add to that, Watto already owned a protocol droid. It's laying there in the garbage dump. Why not just fix that one?
Man.
I see no problem with Anakin wanting to build a protocol droid for his mother. Yes, protocol droids of C-3PO's make and model are mass-produced. 3PO specifically is useful in way more ways than just etiquette and protocol. And kids do a lot of things because they want to. Anakin was probably fascinated with how the droid worked and thus wanted to build one. Anakin's mother, Shmi Skywalker, said, "Anakin, you can't have this thing here." Anakin replied, "But Mom, it's for you." The reason Anakin spent time building the same droid was because he learned how droids worked better after building C-3PO, and or because he worked for a junk dealer with parts most readily available to him.
Number 10. On to planet number 3. Is it time for death yet? Welcome to Coruscant, home of the mid-air collision and boring scenes. So the Queen waits around for some kind of approval or for something to stop her people from dying. Why are they dying? I guess they're dying though. But I didn't see anyone die. In fact, I haven't even seen any Naboo citizen at all. As far as I know, it's a city with 20 or so pilots, a couple of bureaucrats and officials. So then the Queen gets impatient. She asks for a vote of no confidence and then decides to go back to Naboo to fight a huge invasion force alone. Then the Jedi Council tells Qui-Gon that he cannot start training Anakin, but he does it anyways.
I'm not allowed to train you, so I want you to watch me and be mindful.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon both talk about how Anakin is dangerous when he's standing right there.
The boy is dangerous. They all sense it. Why can't you?
Oh God, I hope we didn't hear that. Did he heard that? So then George Lucas completely and utterly finally ruins Star Wars forever by having Qui-Gon explain that the Force is microscopic organisms.
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
Or that microscopic organisms in our cells tell us about the Force, or something. This entire idea and why this is in the movie is so baffling to me that I cannot even wrap my mind around it. It was never even explored or mentioned in the following 2 films. I can really only sum it up with one visual image.
I see nothing wrong with the concept of the midichlorians. You're just overreacting here, and it should come as no surprise that you would blow things like the midichlorians out of proportion since you are the nitpick king. This movie also argued against prejudice, and the Jedi Council was prejudiced against Anakin, and Qui-Gon was unprejudiced and willing to train the boy anyway. Just because you don't see any Naboo citizens does not mean that they are not there.
Finally, we come to the stupid ending, where again nothing makes sense. After hours of boring, passionless, inhuman, robot-like, sleep-inducing dialogue, Jar Jar Binks screams in excitement that he's going home.
Come on, R2.
This was actually the most shocking part of the whole movie, because at this point you forgot you were a human being. Oh, that's right, I'm still alive, and I'm watching a movie, I guess. Wait, did something happen?
Then you spend almost half a minute complaining about the ending of The Phantom Menace with no genuine arguments. How pathetic.
Number 11, please God, make it stop. Make it end. Shazam! The silver spaceship flies back to Naboo. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan go back as well for no reason, and they bring the little kid to a war zone for no reason. But really what's curious about this is that no other Jedi come back with them, even though there might be a Sith there.
We will use all our resources to unravel this mystery. We will discover the identity of your attacker.
Go with the Queen to Naboo and discover the identity of this Dark Warrior.
Oh. I thought you were going to work on that. There's much more important work for the other 500 Jedis here. All the Jedis will just sit here and see who gets elected Chancellor, I guess.
There is actually legitimate reason for Queen Amidala, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan Kenobi to return to Naboo. Let me show you something to prove it.
The Senate is voting for a new Supreme Chancellor, and Queen Amidala is returning home, which will put pressure on the Federation and could widen the confrontation.
And draw out the Queen's attacker.
With the Queen heading back to Naboo to widen the conflict, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are tasked with continuing their protection of her in hopes that they may draw out this mysterious warrior. Qui-Gon has taken upon himself to take care of and train the boy, and he couldn't just leave him in daycare. That wouldn't make sense.
So then they start to approach the planet. Oh wait, something's missing. Hey Bob, hit the music.
Yes, you once.
What?
Twice.
No, not that one. The other one. The other song. Yeah, that's it. So everyone waits until they arrive at Naboo to start discussing how they have no plans at all and no idea what they're doing.
I'm not sure what you wish to accomplish by this.
We have no army.
I can't fight a war for you.
All of a sudden the whole blockade is gone too, and there's just one ship. Where'd they go? That's convenient.
The Gungans will not be easily swayed. And we cannot use our power to help her.
Gee, you didn't have any problem doing it before, asshole.
Why would you need to blockade a planet that you have already fully invaded and are totally occupying? You don't. You would need massive resources to maintain a blockade around the planet. You are good at belittling the Queen's plan without actually thinking things through here.
So then they make a plan. The Gungans act as robot bait so that the Queen can sneak into the palace and capture the Viceroy while the fighters attack the droid control ship. So what happens again when they capture the Viceroy?
Without the Viceroy, they will be lost and confused.
Excuse me? Hi. How do you know for sure that the robots will be lost and confused without the Viceroy? I mean, just by physically capturing him doesn't mean that all the robots will know that he was captured, right? I mean, it just kind of seems like you're making up a bunch of BS right now. Hey, maybe they're programmed to just keep doing what they're doing regardless until they receive more orders? Hey, maybe everyone should focus their efforts on taking out the droid control ship first? Then you could skip the other two dangerous parts. And you could just like walk up to the Viceroy and capture him. Who's in charge here? What's this all about again? Why are we all listening to this 14-year-old girl with no military experience? And I thought serving under Picard was dangerous.
Get back in the Star Trek reviews.
You failed to realize that they had no ships. They needed to draw the droids out of Theed with the Gungan army in order to sneak the pilots in so they can actually accomplish their task.
The battle is a diversion. The Gungans must draw the droid army away from the cities.
You cannot skip the Gungan battle because it is just as essential as the other parts. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home says hi. They needed to capture the Viceroy not so the droids would be lost and confused, but the Trade Federation and those who control the droids.
And there's an even bigger danger. If the Viceroy escapes, Your Highness, he will return with another droid army.
Well, that is why we must not fail to get the Viceroy. Everything depends on it.
You see, if the Viceroy were to escape, he'll be able to return with more droids and the problem would start all over again. The plan makes perfect sense and fits the story here beautifully.
There is a possibility with this diversion, many Gungans will be killed.
Hey, wait, Gungans? I thought they were called Gungas.
They all join forces and everything, and the Gungas battle the droids, and the
Gungans will
Gungas.
What's happening in this movie?
We are sending all troops to meet this army assembling near the swamp.
Why would you meet them? Why not just ignore them? You have a fortified position. Can't you see an obvious ploy to draw away your protection?
This will work to our advantage.
How exactly will it work to your advantage? The Galactic Senate doesn't even know what's happening here. What does it matter?
Once we get inside, you find a safe place to hide and stay there.
Oh Christ, you brought the kid here too? Hey, here's a safe place to hide. Not in the city.
I thought the battle was going to take place far from here.
Hey, idiots, it was a diversion. I tried to warn you. So then the stupid kid sits in a cockpit of a ship. Gee, what a great place to hide. I wonder what's gonna happen next.
You have a laughable problem with the Trade Federation sending their droid army to fight the Gungans. The Trade Federation had no genuine military experience, and they said that they didn't want the battle to take place in or near the city. Newt Gunray is an epic coward.
The difficulty is getting into the throne room. Once we're inside, we shouldn't have a problem.
If the Viceroy was smart, he'd be in a location you would not expect to find him. But since he's clearly a complete idiot, then yeah, he's probably in the throne room. Let's go with that. Oh, he's accidentally flying the spaceship. How cute. I hope he fucking dies. Wait, why is there a child-sized helmet and goggles in the cockpit?
Nothing can get through our shield.
Nothing except for the kid in the spaceship can get through your shields.
You have no argument against Anakin Skywalker accidentally starting up that Naboo starfighter, except for the fact that you don't like it. I have no problem with it, and I am perfectly fine with it, mister.
Then a bad guy shows up, and he wants to fight the Jedis, because he wears black robes. I'm gonna get you. You guys are going down. And the Jedi say, no, you're going down, idiot. Oh, and then they go from the palace to this room. What is this room? Is this in the palace? I mean, I know George wanted the Jedis to fight in a cool place that's really Star Wars-y. So what, this is like a power generator? What does it power, the universe? So you're expecting me to believe that the people that built this technological wonder were dying without space supplies for 2 days? So I have another question. If the Sith have been extinct for a millennium, and only Jedis use lightsabers,
I saw your laser sword. Only Jedis carry that kind of weapon.
then why are the Jedi so darn experienced at sword fighting?
The Jedi train, and they have lots and lots of training to be able to use their lightsabers as good as they do. We never see Luke Skywalker trained to lightsaber fight either, but no one questions why he can excel in it. I smell double standards here, my Plinkett.
So at the start of the film, we see that Jedis can run at a super fast speed when the screenwriter doesn't know how to get them out of a situation where a powerful droid is shooting lasers at them. But we never see the Jedis run fast again. Maybe there never really was a need to run fast again. Oh, yeah, that would have been a good time.
Wipe them out. All of them.
If the orders were to wipe them out, all of them, then why are they taking prisoners?
We will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
Roger, roger.
Yeah, you're such a peaceful people that you keep guns in the armrests of your throne. Yeah, peaceful and paranoid?
Now this is pod racing.
No, this isn't pod racing. That was on Tatooine. You're in a spaceship now. Oh, wait. Oh, he was doing like a thing.
You're complaining about the Jedi running fast in one part of the movie, but not at others, is pathetic and outright nitpicky, and the Jedi can get winded after using Force powers. Then you complained about the droids taking Gungans prisoner. I think that we can assume that Palpatine wanted to wipe out all of the royal personnel and the Jedi, not the Gungans.
Number 12. Obi-Wan gets mad. And then I do. So we're back to the three guys we know nothing about fighting each other in a scene we have no interest in. Their flawless choreography lacks all humanity and emotion. But then something happens. Qui-Gon dies, and Obi-Wan is pissed. Hey, maybe this'll finally get good. Maybe I'll get emotionally involved. You see, Obi-Wan is pumped. He really wants to kick this guy's ass. And then, BAM! Oh, it's right back to highly choreographed fighting. It's like all this was planned out ahead of time.
Keep in mind that the Phantom Menace is set during the prime of the Jedi. Here we see well-trained and seasoned Jedi and Sith fighting on screen for the first time. It makes perfect sense why the fighting in this era would be much more graceful and athletic than in any spot in the classic trilogy.
Hey, remember when Luke Skywalker got really pissed and snapped when Vader was taunting him? Remember how worked up and emotional he got? He just started wailing on Vader. There was no grace or complex choreography. He was just pounding him into submission, filled with rage. When you're worked up with emotion, you begin to lose your composure and control. You expose your humanity a little. Obi-Wan should have done that just a bit. I guess that's the director's fault, huh? In Empire, there's also very little complex choreography. Luke is just barely keeping up in his fight with Vader. Vader's just basically toying around with him. He could totally kick his ass at any moment, but he holds back. You see, this was their first duel. There's a lot going on between the two characters outside the fact that they were swinging swords at each other. There is even a lot more going on at the end of Jedi. Luke was realizing he was kind of becoming his father and taking his place. The Emperor was proving a point that hate and anger can be a powerful ally. You got things like temptation, anger, revelation, defiance, sacrifice, and redemption.
It is so true that there is more at stake in the lightsaber fights in the classic trilogy than in The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace is a careful building block that shades and enhances those moments later on in the saga.
I gotta really stress this point that lightsaber duels have less to do with the fight itself, but more so with the internalization of the characters. So if you've ever said that the duel at the end of A New Hope was the worst one because it had bad fight choreography, and it was like an old guy and a guy in a mask who couldn't see what he was doing, so they were just kind of like awkwardly hitting him with swords, well then I'm afraid you've missed the point entirely. It's really about moments like this. Not this. It's more about this.
I am your father.
And not this. And more about this.
Fulfill your destiny.
And not so much about this.
You also fail to recognize that The Phantom Menace also provides an excellent contrast in the galaxy, how good and prosperous things were, and how hopeless and terrible things become under the Empire's cosmic thumb. If The Phantom Menace were not so bright and cheery, the entire saga would have been monotone. We needed the levity of this film to offset the others and show us what was truly being lost.
Now you might be thinking that the duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan had some kind of depth to it because they were former friends. Now while it's true that this indeed had a little more going on than nothing and even more nothing, this duel didn't need to be 45 minutes long. The ultimate point of everything was that Obi-Wan defeats Anakin. Having them fight in the most ridiculous of places only to wind up on a tiny hill at the end was overindulgent. This fight could have lasted 3 minutes in one location and still have the same impact in the story. The whole thing ends up going on so long that it actually becomes boring, despite the amazing visual effects. The ultimate irony is that this fight between the same characters years later is much more interesting than this one. You see, we need a deeper meaning to things. Without it, none of it really matters, does it?
Special effects are just a tool, a means of telling a story. People have a tendency to confuse them as an end to themselves. A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing.
You said it, brother. Wait, you said that?
The Phantom Menace is deep, and it only makes Star Wars deeper. The better the good times, by contrast, the worse the bad. The Phantom Menace illustrates this point to a T in the Star Wars saga.
Number 13. The ending multiplication effect. Since the first Star Wars movie, the endings have been getting more and more complicated, culminating with Episode 1. After that, they toned it down because they think they realized how awful it was, but let me break it down here. A New Hope. The story is flawlessly built up to the final conclusion. Stop the Death Star before it blows up the planet. The Empire Strikes Back. All story points converge at Cloud City. Luke has his first confrontation with Vader, and Leia and friends try to escape. Return of the Jedi. Luke confronts the Emperor. There's a battle on Endor to destroy the shield generator, and the Rebel fleet attacks the Death Star. And you got 3 stories going on at once. Finally, we get to The Phantom Menace. Gungans fight the droid army. Queen Amidala storms the palace to get the Viceroy. Anakin and Naboo pilots attack the droid control ship, and Jedi's lightsaber fight in the Theed power room. So you got 4. This was one of the major mistakes made in Episode 1. Ironically, the simplest endings, the first 2 movies, with the least locations and events, are vastly more interesting because the plot is built up to them and we can focus on the one thing.
Your complaint about an ending multiplication effect is very pathetic. The climaxes of Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace were not broken up into 3 or 4 separate stories. They just had 3 to 4 parallel events in the same story. Multiple parallel events in a single story is not unusual and is not necessarily relegated to climaxes either. I can very easily think of another movie that had a similar fractured event story, and it came out almost 13 years before The Phantom Menace. It is called Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Kirk and Spock go to the Maritime Cetacean Institute in order to find 2 humpback whales. Scotty and Bones go to Plexicorp in order to create transparent aluminum for an aquarium that is needed to transport the 2 humpback whales to the 23rd century. Uhura and Chekhov beam aboard the nuclear aircraft carrier Enterprise to collect nuclear radiation to revive the busted Klingon crystal. I know that was a big chunk around the middle of the movie rather than the climax, and it did lead to the one thing of saving Earth from that whale probe. The 4 events in the climax of The Phantom Menace did lead to the one thing, which was kicking the Trade Federation off of Naboo.
After the rough cut screening of the movie for the first time, everyone in attendance looks just as baffled at the clusterfuck as we were. George admits to throwing too much out there.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Yeah? The editor then attempts to explain pacing and why 4 scenes with totally different emotional tones don't work well together.
In a space of about 90 seconds, you go from lamenting the death of, a hero, to escape, to slightly comedic with Jar Jar, to Anakin returning when his...
But he kind of realizes he's wasting his time, so he stops. Rick McCollum is frozen in utter shock at how horrible the movie was. Internally, he regrets not challenging Lucas on some of the things he was worried about. Lucas then realizes that he can't remove major segments of the movie in editing because they're intertwined.
I mean, I've thought about this quite a bit, and the tricky part is you almost can't take any of those pieces out of there now. Because each one kind of takes you to the next place, and you can't jump. No, I love it.
Hey, it's too late now.
Granted that the climax of The Phantom Menace is not perfect, but it is pretty well done, and those 4 events each have a vital role to play. The Gungans have to distract the droid army while the Naboo capture the Viceroy, and the Naboo starfighter pilots attack the droid control ship in orbit. The 2 Jedi have to uncover the mystery of the Sith and to draw out and fight the Queen's attacker.
Later on, after everybody started drinking, Lucas attempts to explain his newly minted bowel movement as bold and extreme, stylistic.
It's stylistically designed to be that way, and you can't undo that, but we can diminish the effects of it.
No one looks like they know what's going on, and they all look like they're about to start pointing fingers. But that's just my interpretation of this footage. I wasn't there. So now we get to the ending. They burn Qui-Gon's body, they celebrate Yoda's, there's like an Indian chick there, and there's another thing that looks like Yoda, but it kind of looks like a midget. And then later on, or earlier or something, Yoda and Obi-Wan are talking in the castle, and Yoda says,
"Grave danger I fear in his training."
I gave Qui-Gon my word.
"Oh, you gave Qui-Gon your word." I suppose it's better to rely on that than rather the whole prediction of grave danger. So it seems like the Jedi Council reluctantly agrees to let Obi-Wan train the boy for no real reason. Hey, remember, this is not like some kind of boardroom of company executives making a decision about applesauce packaging. These are Jedi Masters whose entire existence is solely based on the Force, feelings, premonition, and prophecy.
Of course George Lucas has made some mistakes. We all do make mistakes. And there you go, nitpicking the ending of the movie. Yes, the Jedi sensed danger in the prospect of training Anakin Skywalker. But again, the Jedi had an orthodox prejudice that Qui-Gon Jinn helped Obi-Wan Kenobi to shake off. And that prejudice was a factor in the eventual downfall of the Jedi and in Anakin's eventual fall to the dark side.
When they all feel weirded out and predict grave danger, you'd think they, of all people, would follow their own instincts. But instead, for no reason at all, they allow the training.
Agree with you, the Council does. Your apprentice, Skywalker, will be.
Hey, maybe you should have just said no. Yoda's supposed to be really wise, right?
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Wait, what did he just say? Maybe he isn't that wise, cause that don't make a lick of sense. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Can't anger lead to fear, and fear lead to suffering, and then suffering lead to hate? You see, when you have 3 totally interchangeable emotional states, they can't really be arranged in a certain pattern of logic. Let me share some real wisdom with you. Chicken leads to egg. Egg leads to omelet. Omelet leads to fecal urgency.
And what Yoda said about fear leading to anger, then anger leading to hate, and then hate leading to suffering makes perfect sense. Yes, those two terms can be interchangeable, but the order that Yoda presented them in makes sense in the context of that scene in the movie. And by the way, Mr. Plinkett, you have made many more mistakes than George Lucas did.
Number 14, The Aftermath. The Phantom Menace is now the greatest example of cinematic blue balls in the history of motion pictures. And I ain't talking about the kind the Gungas had.
Gungas.
Never again will anything be more wildly anticipated or a bigger disappointment. So who dropped the ball? Well, I guess you could say it was everyone involved in the production. Mainly the producers and those higher up on the food chain. Sure, it's easy to blame George for the script and doing everything wrong, but those people who didn't challenge Lucas on some of the questionable ideas, they also carry some blame. To quote Gary Kurtz, you can really see this in the behind-the-scenes videos. People look scared around George. They laugh at his bad jokes.
You're listening to the music.
When he comes into a room, there's like silence and fear and terror. Every so often you'll catch some looks of confusion and mistrust. You gotta wonder what some of these people were thinking. Now again, I must stress, I wasn't there and I can't pretend to know all the goings on behind the scenes, but it all seems pretty obvious if you think about it.
You did admit that you were not there behind the scenes, yet you jumped to conclusions about what everyone around George Lucas was feeling. You were just assuming that they were scared of him. I see no evidence of that at all. The Phantom Menace was only the biggest cinematic disappointment to people like you because you had high expectations that were simply not met by this movie. At the end of the day, the joke is on you, Plinkett.
Lucas has always been a rogue filmmaker who hated the studio system. He always seemed to want total control on his projects, which I can understand. And while a director should have control on the project, filmmaking should also be a collaborative process. The second screenwriter can help focus the story and the dialogue. Actors are creative people too. They can provide valuable insight on the characters and a lot of really good ideas.
I love you.
I know.
And a good executive producer can be the voice of reason when things start to get out of hand. I think all this can be summed up with the expression, art from adversity. The original Star Wars was plagued with problems. Nothing worked right, things were rushed, I guess, but it ended up being a great movie. When you can make a movie entirely in a computer and then shoot everything against a blue screen in some kind of sterile laboratory, well, some of the magic is lost.
When Obi-Wan was walking around in Camino, George showed him concept paintings of, okay, now you're walking down a hallway and you're looking and you're seeing the cloning facilities, but there was nothing for him to see.
It ends up all looking so clean and sterile, and it lacks humanity, it lacks grit.
Yes, George Lucas hated the studio system. So what? There were problems making the classic trilogy due to limitations and schedules, etc., yet the classic trilogy turned out to be very good. And Lucas had far more control over the making of the classic trilogy than you are letting on. Lucas had total control over Star Wars since no later than the making of The Empire Strikes Back, which is a movie that you love, Plinkett. Plus the prequels had more physical models and sets than the classic trilogy, and they were not just sheer CGI as you paint them out to be. But the Star Wars prequels did pioneer some forms of CGI.
The Phantom Menace also makes you wonder. With total control on every aspect of the film, from the writing to directing to casting, etc., this was the result? Then when you hear tales about how Luke was supposed to be a 65-year-old man with a robot head, Han Solo was supposed to be like a frog, and C-3PO was like a slimy used car salesman type,
C-3PO might sound like a used car salesman.
you have to just wonder, what if? What if Lucas had the kind of control back then he has today? Now I ain't gonna say much more here. I don't know all the facts.
There you go, just jumping to conclusions and assuming what George Lucas would have done if he had total control over the making of the original trilogy. But then again, George Lucas had more control over the making of the original Star Wars trilogy than you like to believe, Plinkett.
Now, I haven't really discussed yet what I found to be the most odd and out-of-place scene in the whole movie. When we first go into Watto's shop, and Jar Jar's messing around with the junk in the background, there's a part where things slow down, and then a talking pizza roll appears and starts talking directly to the audience. It says to butcher your wife in the bathtub.
Hello. You know what to do. Use the meat cleaver and swing hard to break the bone. Put the body in the dumpster and be careful not to get any blood on the carpet, because it doesn't wash out.
I found this scene to be really out of place and not make a whole lot of sense in the context of the movie. I'm not sure what Lucas was going for here, but considering some of the other scenes in the film, I guess it made sense. Now I'd like to discuss further.
You know what to do.
I don't want no pizza rolls. Take that pizza roll and shove it. And with this, we get to the end of this cockamamie king-sized review of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now for my final thoughts. Plinkett, you nitpicked this movie to death and jumped to conclusions left and right due to your obsessive-compulsive nitpicking. Plinkett, you started a huge wave of massive online harassment and cyberbullying directed against anyone who dares to enjoy the Star Wars prequels with this hideous review of yours. And guess what, my Plinkett? I caught you cheating in your king-size review of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It is so sad that many people actually bought into that review. As much as Plinkett says that he hates George Lucas, he owes all of his internet fame to George Lucas. Plinkett would be nothing had it not been for Lucas. Plinkett is very unfair to the Star Wars prequels, and he is a deliberate liar. Thank you, Blade57HRC, for posting a YouTube video about Plinkett's king-sized ignorance. What good can actually come out of Red Letter Media's Star Wars The Phantom Menace review? If there is any good that can ever come out of that long drawn-out nitpicky rage fest, it is that it can serve as a warning about how suffocating and pernicious this type of irrational and obsessive hatred can truly be. Certificate of Hypocrisy. This award certifies that the following named person, Michael Staglasa, is a hypocrite of the first order for saying one thing and doing just the opposite. Awarded this 2nd day of November 2015. Awarded by Blade57HRC and Saganfan1983. Mike Staglasa is an enormous hypocrite, and his entire opinion about the Star Wars prequels is based on double standards. Therefore, I can totally destroy Staglasa's entire argument against the Star Wars prequels with just one simple observation. Just about every argument that Staglasa uses against the Star Wars prequels can also be used against the original Star Wars trilogy. And with that aforementioned statement of fact, Plinkett's entire opinion about the Star Wars prequels totally crumbles like a house of cards. Have you ever heard of the scientific precept of Occam's razor before? Occam's razor states that the simplest explanation is the best one. And in the case of reviewing movies, Occam's razor means that you keep your movie reviews short and to the point, no longer than around 20 minutes. Long drawn-out nitpicky rage fest like Red Letter Media's 70-minute so-called review of The Phantom Menace violate Occam's razor. Here is a list of all the successful films that Mike Staglasa has ever made. It is rightfully blank because all of Mike Staglasa's movies were failures. Red Letter Media, exploiting the Star Wars name to make money because their own films are failures since 2009. To be honest, I am not a big fan of Star Wars myself, but I have had it with all of that obsessive-compulsive Star Wars prequel bashing. So here you have a guy who is not a big Star Wars fan telling Staglasa that what he has been doing is wrong. This has been my commentary on Red Letter Media's infamous nitpicky rage fest on Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I wish you clear skies and safe travels.